The new VP eliminated my role, calling me dead weight and legacy bloat. What he didn't check was the fine print of a $500 million federal contract. My signature wasn't optional, it was legally required. The moment they escorted me out, they triggered a cascading failure that cost the company $500 million in projected revenue and activated a hidden clause that forced them to hire me back at triple my salary for 18 months. Welcome to Karma Chronicles, your ultimate destination for thrilling revenge stories, where corporate hubris always meets its match. If you believe in contractual justice, hit that subscribe button and share this story. I knew something was fundamentally wrong the second the junior HR representative wouldn't make eye contact with me in the elevator. She stood there in her stiff, itchy blazer, clutching her little iPad like it was a sacred text. Her eyes were fixed on the floor numbers blinking upward, never once meeting mine. It was the look people give when they know a dog is about to be put down, and they desperately don't want to be the one holding the leash. We passed my floor. Silence. When we stopped at 16, the executive floor, I actually let out a quiet, sardonic chuckle. "Oh," I murmured, mostly to myself. So it's going to be that kind of day. They had the audacity to call it a check-in. Room B2, the same sterile room they used for onboarding interns and those corporate training sessions where a PowerPoint tells you not to embezzle. I walked in, and there he was, sitting smug with his ankle on his knee like he'd just invented logistics. Marcus Vale, the new VP of Strategy. Fresh from some minor acquisition in Texas, Marcus was brought in to modernize Lexridge. His only real accomplishment so far was swapping the high-quality coffee brand in the break room for some bitter sludge he claimed was artisanal. Laura, the head of people, sat beside him, her smile tight as the ponytail strangling the last of her hope. "Karen," Marcus began, his tone sickly sweet, "thanks for coming in on short notice." I didn't say a word, just nodded once. I didn't need a presentation. I'd seen enough vultures circling a body to know when it was my turn on the slab. "We've been doing some organizational restructuring," Laura jumped in, "and unfortunately your position is being eliminated, effective immediately." She pushed a glossy folder toward me, new navy and gray corporate branding front and center. Inside was a severance package, 3 months' pay, contingent on signing a non-disparagement clause. I smiled, a soft, unreadable smile that made Marcus shift slightly in his chair. He went on to explain how the company was evolving, how they valued my contributions, and how this was nothing personal, which is the corporate equivalent of "it's not you, it's me" before they ghost you. He had the audacity to say I should be proud of my legacy. He used that word legacy like I was some retired quarterback or an old family dog they were shipping off to a farm upstate. I didn't flinch. I just nodded and signed where they asked me to. The smile never left my face. They had no idea. No clue that just last quarter I had personally revised the compliance matrix for all federal contracts. No clue that Clause 14.2b, the one I personally redlined after legal skipped their own damn review, explicitly required my signature, Karen S. Langford, on any logistics contract exceeding $250 million. And tomorrow was the finalization meeting for a $503.7 million government defense logistics contract. $500 million, my signature, legally required. Not optional, required. They hadn't read the clause. They handed me a cardboard box, told me security would escort me down. As I left the room, Marcus stood and said, "No hard feelings, yeah?" I turned to him, still smiling, and said, "None at all." But inside, I was already rewriting his exit memo in my head. The walk back to my office felt like a funeral march, only I wasn't the one in the casket. I passed the product team's pod. I passed Dev. I offered a half smile and kept moving. No grand speech, no paper-throwing tantrum, just the sound of my heels echoing across the floor and the sudden hush that followed me like a ghost. My nameplate still read Karen S. Langford, VP Compliance and Contract Strategy. 2 decades at Lexridge, 7 different CEOs, and now I was being escorted out like I'd stolen staplers. I sat down, opened my laptop, which they hadn't remembered to deactivate yet, and saw the word amateurs flicker across my mind. I didn't delete a thing. I didn't wipe drives. I didn't forward files to my Gmail. I didn't need to. Everything that mattered had already been stitched into the systems weeks ago. I opened Outlook, typed in my personal address, and blind copied my lawyer, Alyssa Duval, a divorce shark turned corporate watchdog, the kind who could weaponize footnotes. Subject line, Clause 14.2, signature requirement. Attached were 4 PDFs, my original contract, the updated compliance protocols, the contract review timeline, and the memo I'd sent legal last month warning them not to change protocols until after the Q4 federal review, each file labeled, dated, and time-stamped. I hit send. The email vanished into the ether like a grenade with the pin pulled. By 3:45 that same afternoon, Marcus Vale was already measuring the window for new blinds. According to the interns' group chat, he waltzed into his new office with the subtlety of a frat boy who just stole a rival's mascot. "Finally trimming the fat," he told one finance guy. "Dead weight had to go. We're streamlining." I had my feet up on my patio chair at home, remote access window still active. It hadn't deactivated my credentials. I watched him. First thing he did, rolled in a hideous, neon green ergonomic gaming chair. He dumped my custom-fitted leather one into the hallway like it was covered in lice. Then the nameplate, unscrewed mine, and slapped on a plastic one that said Marcus Vale, VP Strategy. He didn't even center it. He replaced my law volumes with books titled Crush It, Scaling the Hustle, and something co-authored by a guy with frosted tips. I opened Slack, still logged in, and changed my status to out of office. Permanently watching. He didn't notice. Why would he? He was too busy celebrating, calling in the marketing team to discuss his rebrand initiative, and asking if someone could design him a new email signature with an animated logo. He thought the crown was his. Now my lawyer, Alyssa Duval, called me from a rooftop bar somewhere in Cleveland. "Karen," she said, after one sip of what I imagined was her usual gin and something. I read it 3 times. Clause 14.2b is still active. They're absolutely screwed. "Still names me as required signatory of record?" I asked, feigning curiosity. "Yep. Any federal logistics contract above $250 million requires your review, authorization, and signature. It's in black and white. You even initialed the margin. They can't touch the contract without you, Karen. You're the keystone." I pulled up the federal contract schedule on my tablet. Project 764A, Defense Logistics Supply Optimization. Value, $503.7 million. Final review meeting. Tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. The contract wasn't just numbers, it was layered with federal compliance stipulations and risk mitigation clauses I personally engineered. And according to Appendix G, any change in signatory required a 60-day vetting period and a federal background check. Marcus had no background check filed. He had no compliance clearance. It would have been funny if it weren't so tragically predictable. At exactly 8:17 a.m. the next morning, my inbox pinged with a link to a public-facing Zoom webinar. Lexridge Systems Q4 Federal Contract Finalization Prep. I clicked. There was Marcus, full screen, grinning like he'd just been told he was up for Best Actor. "Morning, team. Big day tomorrow. We are this close to locking down the biggest logistics contract in Lexridge history." He gave them a double thumbs up. No one asked, "Where's Karen?" I watched as he called the compliance documentation a formality and suggested they go light on the jargon during the federal presentation. One of the Lockworth defense consultants raised his hand and asked, "Just to confirm, is the final signatory cleared on this?" Marcus didn't even blink. "Yeah, I've got it handled," he said with the confidence of a man who thinks procurement protocol is a coffee blend. I clicked over to the clause list again. Paragraph 7 of Appendix D, required signatory Karen S. Langford. No substitutions allowed without 60-day federal pre-clearance. Marcus cut off the hesitant legal counsel. I'll loop in compliance if needed. Let's not waste energy on red tape. We've got momentum here. I closed the tab. You ever watch someone cook a beautiful meal using drain cleaner instead of olive oil? That's what this was. They were seasoning the destruction with ego and garnishing it with oversight. They were flying blind, high on buzzwords and scented candles. I sat back and whispered to no one, "Let them cook." The boardroom was set like a wedding for corporate narcissists. Marcus sat at the head of the table like a peacock in heat. At 10:28 a.m. the guests arrived. Two representatives from the Department of Defense, with hard faces and harder briefcases. Marcus greeted them with the energy of a game show host. They opened the binders, then they paused. Page 3, the signature block. "Excuse me," said Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Breck, the contracting officer. He tapped the page with a blunt index finger. "Whereas Karen Langford," Marcus leaned back and said smoothly, "Karen's no longer with the company. I'm heading compliance now. Everything's still good to go." Silence. Colonel Breck flipped the binder to Appendix D, found Paragraph 7, and read aloud. All federal contracts exceeding $250 million require signatory execution by the authorized compliance officer listed in Appendix F. Substitution or delegation of this role is not permitted without 60-day notice and federal clearance approval. He closed the binder. "Then this is canceled." The oxygen got sucked out of the room. I imagine Marcus blinked twice, the way utterly dumb men do when their internal operating system hits a logic error. At exactly 10:35 a.m., an internal message lit up the compliance channel like a Christmas tree on fire. Did anyone actually review 14.2b before terminating Karen? The board chair, Alina Trask, steel-haired and terrifying in heels, finally spoke. "Why didn't you read the clause?" The sentence landed like a guillotine. General Counsel Rachel Yoon sat down, her voice quiet. She was the only one authorized for federal clearance. Background check took 6 months. No one else was even listed in the system. Another board member asked, "So she knew?" Rachel nodded. "Oh, she absolutely knew." Alina turned to Marcus. "And you fired her?" Marcus straightened his tie and attempted one last Hail Mary. "I was told she was obstructive, set in her ways, hard to work with." At that, someone down the table actually laughed, a sharp, stunned puff of air. They finally understood. I wasn't just a signature. I was the spine. And without it, the whole damn deal, $500 million, folded like a cheap beach chair in a hurricane. The emergency board meeting was called for 3:00 p.m. General Counsel Rachel Yoon arrived with her lipstick smudged. "This deal is dead," she announced. HR's Laura stammered. "We were told her role had no critical dependencies." "She was the system," the board chair muttered. "You lost $500 million because someone wanted a different office chair." What I felt wasn't joy. It was justice, ice cold and patient. I had already written the final sentence. The next day, my lawyer, Alyssa Duval, walked into the boardroom wearing dark glasses and a silk scarf like a villain from an old courtroom drama. She didn't smile. She placed a single envelope on the table and said, "This is Miss Langford's invoice." Inside, 3 pages. Page 3 held a highlighted excerpt from my original contract, Clause 22.1a. It read, "In the event of role termination without a transitional period of no less than 45 business days, the departing employee shall be engaged as a paid consultant at 3 times the final monthly salary for a minimum of 18 months. Engagement is not optional, mandatory consultancy. They had fired me on a Wednesday with no handoff, no transition file, no continuity protocol. The clause triggered the moment HR's little clipboard parade escorted me to the elevator. Alyssa didn't even wait around. "You'll find the retainer amount has already been wired," she said, and walked out like she was late for brunch with Karma. Marcus Vale was escorted out that morning. No fanfare, not even time to clear his new desk chair. The contract remained unsigned. The DoD had already flagged Lexridge for compliance failure. That's 3/4 of projected revenue flushed down the platinum-plated drain Marcus had installed. Meanwhile, I was sitting in an Adirondack chair by Lake Erie. The wind rustled the pages of a paperback. My bank app pinged softly. Retainer received. 18 months, triple rate, no office politics, no Marcus, just me, my piece, and a paper trail so tight it could strangle a CFO. They handed me a box. I handed them a clause, and I know which one weighed more.